strategic, arranger, activator, connectedness, includer. My name's Marcia Barnes. I'm the CEO and founder of Valve and Meter Performance Marketing.
I'm Darren Veresami.
I'm Brandon Miller, and this is The Strengths Whisperer, the show empowering leaders to create, build, and sustain great places to work. On this episode, we have Marcia Barnes, CEO and founder of Valve and Meter Performance Marketing. Welcome to the show, Marcia.
Thanks for having me.
Marcia, I am so excited to talk to you about your strengths because you have one of those really cool journeys where you were the early adopter learning about your strengths and then had another encounter with StrengthsFinder. And then with the name change to Clifton Strengths, we just did a recent retest. And so it's always fun to have side-by-side results with our guests and to talk about their strengths from that context. But before I get into this, I want our listeners to know a little bit about you and tell them about Valve and Meter, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Valve and Meter Performance Marketing is a marketing agency that is built on a foundation of financial accountability. So we're a little bit obsessed about measuring every dollar we're in stewardship of on behalf of a client back to the return on marketing spend it generates. We just had a new person start today, which I think puts us at 50, the magic number. Team members here in the Indianapolis area. We have clients all over the country, and we are manifesting abundance on behalf of our clients by helping them grow through marketing in a transformational way.
I had occasion to sit with Marcia and her team recently. So at 34 Strong, we are in the market to get to talk to some people to give us some support. And I shared with Marcia that I was so impressed by the personal accountability and responsibility her team members conveyed after doing a very thorough analysis of our industry, people who share it with us around that personal ownership of how they would treat our investment. And Marcia, I found that to be refreshing. I thought that was a real testament to the way you're setting up this company. And I imagine it's contributing to your success.
Absolutely. I learned this methodology when I was serving at a company that we grew from 2 million to over 400 million in revenue. And the owner always told me, Marcia, I have an unlimited appetite for marketing that works. So if you can prove out the return on marketing spend, I'm going to buy all that I can find. So that's how we operate.
Unlimited appetite. There you go. So listeners, I know this is early in the show to say this, Valve and Meter. You can find Marcia Barnes and her team. I couldn't speak higher enough than the process they're going through. And we're lining ourselves up to get to work with them. Pretty excited by the opportunity because the thoroughness of your process before we even got to the process was really impactful and getting into your strengths a little bit. So this most recent version of your strengths, strategic, came number one. And then the version of your strengths I have previous, strategic, was number two. So we're going to go ahead and call this one of your lead strengths. And for our listeners who've heard many of these shows, we've talked about this particular strength of strategic in so much as strategy as defined by the dictionary, something everyone can learn. We all can learn to be strategic. The definition in Clifton Strengths, it does try to hold itself as an intact language. And so strategy in Clifton Strengths is more closely connected to intuition and that space where ideas can flow without the need for always having deep reflection. So it's very instinctual thinking. People with high strategic can be very quick on their feet when positioned with any sort of cul-de-sac, meaning someone comes to Marcia and says, Marcia, it can't be done. We just can't do it. Typically, when we work with a leader with high strategic, what's their attitude about that, Marcia? Someone says it can't be done?
Get over yourself. Actually, what I always say, it's a Jim Rohn quote. He goes back to many years ago. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better.
That was a good one. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. And so that strategic strength, I heard, saw, experienced. Another one of your strengths that came in really high was arranger. So previous assessment, it was 11 that I'm looking at. Then it popped up to 2, which is really common. We see that tight grouping, 1 through about 15, can move quite a bit. And I want to spend a moment on arranger because this is the strength that people often step back and they just wonder, how in the world are you managing and organizing and administrating that many things, that sheer number on your own? And the image we always think about with a ranger is the conductor of the orchestra. So having all of the pieces, and in their mind, they're just moving pieces around the board to get maximum proficiency. And seeing it so high twice, I imagine that ability to have multi-dimension, multi-operating processes might feel pretty natural for you. Would that be fair to say?
That's true. In fact, right before I got on the call, I was in a conversation with a client that had some needs that I was like, I don't know if this can be done. And then I go to the restroom. I'm like, oh, that's how it would be done. Just moving the budget and the timing and his needs together and how you could paper that, how our team could react to it. I think those are things that, given enough trips to the restroom, I'll figure it out.
It's so fun that you said that, because that is often with the combination of strategic arranger, it happens that way. It's, I don't have it, but I'm just going to let it swim around a little bit. I just need to clear the space, and then it drops. It's almost like, oh, there it is. Now I've connected the dots and I've got there. And I'm curious for you, Marcia, because some leaders I meet that carry both of those strengths, they find that if they just give themselves enough space to just clear their mind for a moment, just let it clear the clutter, and then it's like all of a sudden the puzzle starts to appear. And what became, it was fuzzy, it's all of a sudden coming into real time. Do you have that experience as a leader in your role?
I do. And I think a question I would ask you, Brandon, would be, it seems like I see it when other people do it, that it might not even be their top strength, but we're working on a very complex marketing strategy for a worldwide group of missionaries right now. And one of our team members is just a brilliant, brilliant SEO marketer. He's just been going to bed every night with this thing in his head. He's really wanting to find a solution for these missionaries. His family was involved in mission work decades ago. And so it's like in his heart and in his head. And he comes in and he fills this 8-foot by 5-foot whiteboard with all these arrows and words and directions and things. And I just went in and glanced at it, and he gave me 3 points out of about 100 that are on the board. And I went, oh my God, this is the solution they've been looking at for 20 years. I could just see it in what he had created there. Does that happen a lot? Were you able to spot it when other people do it?
Absolutely. In fact, a ranger is one of those strengths that has a natural affinity to find strengths in others. There's 3 of them that do this. It's individualization, maximizer, and strategic. And maximizer sits at your number 6. Individualization has been top or just out of the top. You have this very natural ability to see and spot what works either in people, in a process, a system. And what arrangers can be known for is their comfort and ease in delegating and uplifting others to succeed.
Yeah, I don't have to own the idea. I don't get attached to things that I think. I just throw them out there and let other people figure it out sometimes.
Yeah, and when you think about arrangers, something that they're known for is low ego. They're very comfortable letting others thrive and shine and be their very best. And as such, they can build very successful teams, very successful. In fact, often you'll note not only career, but in life, they've just seemed to center themselves around good teams. And you can tell me if this matches you, they seem to find themselves in the leader role. It's just whether they picked it or it found them, they just seem to just find themselves being asked to lead. Is that something you've identified in life and career?
Yeah, this will sound bad, but I'm known for operating my life on a Christian worldview. And so for most people, they'll think she's going to church somewhere regularly, that she's a member of a church. And I'm not. That's like my dirty little secret. Well, the reason for this is because I naturally get in these leadership roles. My calling, my ministry is business as missions. So I'm pastoring in a business sense and trying to help people find a way to work in a company that's following Christian worldview policies and processes and values, right? So if I get into a church too much, I naturally start to get asked to do these leadership things, and I don't have the capacity for it. So what I do is I go incognito and just visit different churches around the area. Periodically, I've got like 8 churches I'll just drop in and out of to try not to get tagged as a leader,
That's awesome.
I may go to the dark world for that someday, but that's my process.
I've actually heard other spiritual leaders have that same mindset that it's hard to go incognito too long before someone's going to notice. And as you were saying, your ability to spot abilities than others. Some leaders going to go, I see you. I see that.
And then you're running the drive for the soup kitchen, and I'm not good at those things, and so then everybody's disappointed. So I just stay in my strengths lane.
I actually like this topic to unpack it a little bit because I'm also operate from a Christian worldview. And I think of myself as a leader of 34 Strong. You mentioned the word ministry. I do feel a calling to develop a business that does match my values. It matches my philosophy. I couldn't imagine a different way. And it's refreshing to hear someone who shares our faith say the same thing, that I feel called that this is business's mission. Like, this is where I serve. And for any of our faith-based listeners, sometimes we get caught in this, well, that's the holy stuff over there when it's on the church grounds and you're doing this. The stuff you got to do to support your family, where I think we might agree, it's all the same thing. It's however we work, we can do it in a way that really brings forward values that we cherish.
Yeah, I missed for a long time in my career the fact that at creation, work was given to us by God as a blessing. And we were given dominion over this planet. I missed that. I always thought of it as just the fall of man, mainly, not woman too, but we kind of got drug along. That's a joke. All right. If work's a blessing, work can be worship, right? And so when I'm here, work is a worship type function for me. And looking at all the way these people have been created individually and are called to this space to serve and help other companies transform their businesses and their results. And that, to me, it's a holy thing.
Yeah, I'm going to connect you back to strengths. Now, your number 4 strength is connectedness. It was previously on your last report number 8. And I'll tell you a little bit about this one, because connectedness, it was originally called spiritualization, because it was the best way that they could describe someone who could see the invisible links between events and people and things, and often regarded as someone with a deep spiritual foundation. They didn't go so far as to say where the foundation was. So many different persuasions can find their way into connectedness. But as a strength, what it allows is someone to seamlessly weave their values, their spiritual life, and it actually provides them a basis of becoming very trusted, because you trust that they're going to connect back always to source. Whatever source is, they're going to connect back to source. And in many cases, the source is something that's positive. It's a good force. It's something for good. So then these leaders become sometimes very easy to track with, because you trust that they're connecting the links and they're going to hold true to their values, because for them to violate their own values is to violate self. That's more of a punishment to them than if they violate you, like violating self philosophy and values.
This missionary group that I'm involved with, Youth with a Mission, Homes of Hope. 2 years ago, I had a customer call me at Valve and Meter that was interested in us doing their marketing. And we had about a 45-minute conversation. And you know my deal, I do a free marketing assessment to make sure it's a good fit for them and that they think we're a good fit for them. And it was very small, and I was afraid the risk level was going to be too high. And I said, Tyler, why don't you try and grow these things first, and then let's talk again in about a year and see where you're at. Before we got off the call, he said, Marcia, tell me, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. What do you know about Youth with a Mission? And so I'm telling him about what I do there. And then he starts telling me about how he's involved with them in a different type of ministry. So I got off the call and was just really blessed by it that we accidentally had been connected to people who know this ministry. And I sent him a book that was written by the founder of Homes of Hope, Youth with a Mission founds Homes of Hope. Dropped attachment to it. 8 months later, he calls me and he goes, Marcia, that book you sent me changed my life. He said, I've sold my business. I feel like God's calling me to take my family on a discipleship training school with Youth with a Mission and to be missionaries and maybe open a base somewhere in the world after we get out of our training. I was just, wow. And he said, so can you connect me to other business people who have done this sort of thing? And unbelievably, I have a pretty healthy network of people who have done that. So I make the connection calls, and he has some great conversations with folks. In September of last year, I went on my 20th mission trip with Youth with a Mission. On the same day I landed in Tijuana for my mission, he landed in Kona to start his discipleship training school. And then this deal is, in discipleship training school, it's 3 months of training on how to be a missionary, and then 3 months of outreach somewhere in the world helping people know and love God. They get assigned to Mazatlan. Well, I have a good friend that's an Indianapolis business person where I live in Indianapolis that is involved in the Mazatlan Youth with a Mission base. And so I emailed him. I said, hey, my guys, I told him the story I just told you. He's in Mazatlan. Could you reach out to him and try to meet him? And he goes, be glad to. I'm in Mazatlan right now. We can say that I'm connected, but it's the spiritual piece of it, the holy piece of it that's doing all the unknown. I just trust that I'm supposed to be watching for people I can love and serve through connecting them with people or things I know to improve their lives.
What makes connectedness a strength is you can see the links.
Right.
You can see them, and then you start to trust them. You start to trust that I see where the origin source and I can see where it's going. And when connectedness and strategic play hand in hand, you really learn to trust your instincts. You really learn the consequence when you haven't or don't. And when you know, oh, I can, thank you, I see it. And for many with high connectedness, they're attributing to God. They're contributing to the source that they draw from. And then they just get to see what some of us can't see. We're trusting you. We're taking your word for it, that this is all happening on purpose. There's a design involved here. This isn't just happenstance. That's the power of the connectedness strength. So listeners, what you've got to hear today is just some of how these strengths show up in real life, inside of the office, in our walks, in our day-to-day. You know, Marcia, a big part of our listenership are people who are either management style role, leadership, executives, directors in agency or the like in the government space. And we love to ask our listeners, so when it comes to building a great place to work, a place that is an employer of choice, what are some of the things that you have found in your career that really work to build a strong, healthy workplace?
I kind of started Valve and Meter in an urgent situation. There was a company some of us were working at that was closing down. And so we were going to start our own agency and we had to move very quickly. I had 2 weeks to make the decision. And the first of those 2 weeks, I was going to be on a planned vacation in San Diego. I was going to have the perfect single woman's vacation. Go stay at the Coronado Hotel, eat at all the best restaurants, watch a baseball game at Petco, see the museums, all the nice restaurants. I had it all planned out. This whale watching, yada, yada, yada. I get off the plane in San Diego and I'm like, I coughed a little bit and I'm like, oh, my throat's sore. I didn't notice that before. And within 6 or 7 hours, I had full-blown flu. And I was flat on my back in that hotel room the whole week. And so it was a message to me to take this time, be at peace, and figure out what you want this thing to look like. And I wrote page after page after page of what I envisioned the company's culture to be, from the culture of how we do business to how we pay our bills to how we collect invoices to how we serve customers, all the way through to the culture of giving and the culture of events and all of the topics that you wanted it to be the way that people would experience your business, both internal people and our clients. And 6 years later, now looking at those lists of things I wrote and seeing 96% of it is showing up, because I didn't bring that back and make a plan with 6 steps on each of these bullet points. I just wrote it, captured it, came back and went to work, and here it is. So I think being intentional about what you want the culture to be. I've got a book club here at the office, a group of ladies that are going through the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Great book.
Yeah, first things first, making sure you understand what's important to go after. So I would say that's number 1. Number 2 is the way you're going to communicate. So we're a performance review environment at Valve and Meter, which is not what HR best practices would tell you to do. And someday I might regret it, but I think performance reviews create a communication landmine for employee and supervisor, because it says once a year, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think about all the things you've done great this year and all the things you've done bad. And if you're a great employee, I've got all these things you did great, but I'm going to have to give you 1 or 2 or 3 things that you can do better at. And that person who scores a 5 out of 5 for you on a performance review, who hears 2 or 3 things that they could do better, is crushed, no matter how much good you say in that moment. And then you have the recency factor in there of what's happened with you recently. So you might have 10 months of great production, and then you've got a slow couple 2 months, and guess what? It's time for your performance review. So I just think it creates landmines and doesn't give me the communication vibration that I like. And we're here talking about assessments, so this might come across interesting or weird, But I don't believe in surveys. I think when you survey, you cut off the natural communication of listening to one another and expressing your ideas. I don't do a lot of surveys. We do things when they're required, but I want us to have active conversations about what's working, what's not, our ideas, and how we get from here to there. I think you have to have leaders that have the right qualities. In my career, too many times accepted somebody's gruff behavior or poor leadership as okay to tolerate because they got results, and it's just not healthy. So I think that's another big thing.
Yeah.
One thing I'm noticing in this remote work world, with a great office here in Indianapolis, about a third of our people work here day to day. A third come to the office sometimes and work from home sometimes, and a third work only remote. But when we come together for an event, the joy is just deafening. Like we have to watch ourselves because we get so loud celebrating together in a restaurant or something. That's something I'm noticing from remote work because we're not together every day. We do treasure the time that we are together, and you can tell our people like each other. So I think that's an important part of culture too. Understanding that culture is not this nebulous thing that the company's wafting down on you, but it involves each of us engaging in it and bringing what we can to it is important. I was inside a business that we grew from 2 million to 400 million in 14 years. But there were a couple of those years like where we went from 85 to 200 million and then went from 200 million to 350 million in the space of 12 or 18 months. So that experience in that fast growing company, it was hard to manage and maintain the culture at the rates that you wanted to. And I heard a great speaker who was the culture leader, actually, similar size, high growth business here in Indianapolis. And he said, the culture of any business is what it is on the day you walk into that business. And every business has some things that are really great about its culture and some things that are terrible. Your job as a leader in that culture is to lift up what's great about it and push down what's not, so that it doesn't end up being bad for the employees. And so I thought that was a good paradigm to look at culture with, lifting up the good and pushing down the bad.
And I would say on that comment, for our listeners who understand the strengths philosophy in regards to thinking more about what's right with people, and you can insert what's right with organizations, companies, that we have strengths as individuals and there are strengths that we possess as a family, as a business. And we do well to embrace what we do well, and that what might work for another company may not work for us. That might not be what we are. I was laughing inside as you talked about celebrating together. At the start of this year, we did a company retreat. We brought everyone into our Northern California office area and we reserved space at a nearby location. And part of our time is we would do group activities, group games. And one of the games we played where we were in two teams and you had to find the egg. And so one team was responsible for hiding the egg and creating boundaries, and the other team had to come in and they weren't allowed to see anything. Well, we end up with this fully engaged competition where people started to erect barriers using the furniture of this location. Someone said it looked like we were doing the revolution scene from Les Mis. Like we had just stacked up all of this furniture. And it was so riotous. I mean, our people were laughing so hard and enjoying it and competing that, of course, we were then asked, could you please put our furniture back and maybe not pick us as a destination next time for your meetings? But yet that was true to our culture. Our people love to have fun. They love to do games. They love to engage with each other. And even though they all flew in from around the country, that's our ethos, right? And I couldn't say to someone, well, if you're really having a healthy culture, you got to have big games that people get involved in and do this. No, every culture within an organization is unique as the people who are leading it and as unique as the people who gather to it. And I love that quote, build up, push up what's great and the things that aren't, because who's perfect? Who doesn't have stuff that you got to solve and work on? And that's powerful. So for our listeners, I want to mention a couple of them. I think when you said about the active communication, and you are definitely in a line of many people thinking about, why are we waiting till review? These conversations should be ongoing. Reviews should never be a surprise if you're going to do them. And really, that coaching, collaborative relationship between report and reportee, right? So who am I reporting to and how are we ongoing in our dialogue seems to carry a lot of weight.
Right. I probably only had 2 or 3 performance evaluations in my career because I've been an entrepreneur most of the time. But My boss at the $400 million company, he did his first one when we were like the first year I had joined the team. And he did not have a good experience from that because he came in with something that he had been holding for a long time. And I said to him, I said, you mean to tell me you've been walking around here for 9 months without telling me that? And now we're going to sit down today in a performance review where I could have been working on this for 9 months and now you're telling me about it? No, I'm not going to do that.
If you're hearing her today, listener, Marcia's describing a very common situation between a manager and employee where all of a sudden this goodwill that I thought we had now feels like we have a gap that I wasn't aware of. You've held something from me. And it's almost a gotcha grab. It feels like, why would you set me up? Why wouldn't you let me know to amend that? Because I could have solved that, as you said, 9 months ago.
Yeah. Well, after I got done with him, he wasn't going to do that again.
Sounds like that. Sounds like that.
I have held people's hands across this city that come to me, friends who are executives in other companies, who come to me in tears, sobbing at a table over a meal, asking for advice on how to process this performance review they got from their boss. And I'm like, it's unfortunate. I just think it's an unfortunate hurt, you know.
I tell you what, it's such a big part of our mission at 34 Strong. We believe that when someone is promoted to be someone's boss and all they're going to draw from is what, the well they drank from, and they haven't got outside to understand there's a way to do this that really works for people. And there's some common denominators of how you build trust, how you show respect, how you show them that you care. And caring would mean we are going to have an open conversation. We're going to demonstrate interest and investment. And I am invested in your success as much as you want to succeed. In fact, a great leader feels almost more happy about their success than they do because you've arrived there. And that's a critical piece, I think, to building a healthy workplace.
And you're not done until you can see others duplicating it. You can lead it as much as you want, but until you see it showing up with people throughout the organization, it ain't happening. One of our team members here at Valve and Meter on the executive team, Kelly, her daughter was expecting to have a grandchild within 3 weeks. They were like 3 weeks out from the birth. And Kelly had a wedding in Nashville. It's about 5 hours away from Indianapolis from here. And she goes to a wedding that weekend. And sure enough, the daughter calls her and she's gone into labor and she's got nobody at her house. And she's got a 3-year-old daughter that nobody to take care of. And Kelly's calling all the relatives. She can't find anybody. And so she starts calling team members. And our HR VP, he got out of bed, met the young lady at the hospital, and sat there and took care of that 3-year-old while her sister was being born until Kelly came back from Nashville. So then they go home. The crib isn't put together. The high chair's not, all the stuff he needs not put together. And so some of the other team members went to Kelly's house that next day and got her a baby bed, moved into the house and put it together and got set up for this little one that had come 3 weeks early. Now work in a place like that and tell me you can't win.
That's beautiful. This is such a gift, Marcia. Thank you for sharing that, because those are the sorts of things that you can't compel, that can't force it, you can't make that happen. That's aligned philosophy, that's aligned values. These are people that are bought into, when we are working together, we're going to spend a third of our lives together, whether we like it or not, at this place. And if we can build a healthy community together, we all win. And community always goes beyond the 4 walls of the office, always. And that's what you demonstrate. So listener, I wanted to tell you, as I said, with Valve and Meter, I think you'll find that if you're looking for support and you're interested to get feedback that's really valuable just on the front end, I'm going to encourage you to reach out. But also just hearing Marcia talking about the team and the quality of the culture, just know that these are great people. So listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Strengths Whisperer. What did you take away from the conversation with Marcia? I hope you took some notes. There were some great things. We'd love to know. If you would like to learn your strengths, as we talked today about Marcia's strategic, arranger, we had the connectedness going on today, talking about these strengths. If you'd like to learn yours, email us at this address, Brandon, Brandon, at the number 34 and the word strong.com. Brandon at 34strong.com. Again, if you're ready to discover your top 5 or your strengths, please in the subject line, put that you heard us on the podcast with Marcia and we'll be happy to send you over a code. And so, Marcia, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about Valve and Meter and the work that you're doing, or about YWAM, or the other work you've done, or how to build a healthy culture, or just connect in and have you hold their hand while they share some challenging things, Marcia, how can people get in touch with you?
Brandon, I forgot to mention, I do have a book coming out in a few weeks, like we're about 4 weeks out from distribution. It's called Here We Grow, the framework to 10x your results and transform your life. And a lot of the things I'm talking about today with you are reflected in that book. If you'd like to learn more about Valve and Meter, you can go to valveandmeter.com. And we've got a great website there with ways to contact us and to learn about what we're doing in the field of growing businesses.
Thank you, Marcia. And for the book, where would they go for that?
We'll have it on Amazon and then around 15,000 retailers, they say, around the country. Understand it's not good to grade. I think they print one and then you take it and then they go print another one in the back and put it out there. I think that's...
Yep. Well, listener, if you heard that, it's Here We Grow, Marcia Barnes. Sounds like you can find that here soon, probably about the time this show airs. That book will either be out already or just coming out. So go ahead and look up on Amazon, Here We Grow, Marcia Barnes, and you'll be able to find that. And so, Marcia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. It was a great conversation.
Awesome. Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the Strengths Whisperer, and we will see you soon.